fall, everyone. I'm back. Apologies, I did not mean to take the entire summer off. That was not planned. My summer was pretty good, darn good though. We had a little cousin camp for Nora and her cousins the first week she was off of school, and that was really like core memories were made, you know, mini putting, trampoline park, adventures. And then we went to Toronto for Nora's birthday, and we went to medieval times, and Nora was thrown by our night a little flower for her, and that made her day. It was on her birthday, so it was a big deal. We went to the aquarium where I promptly fell in love with an octopus. It was so nice. Anyway, it was really good, but I don't know if you know, I'm more of a fall person. Like, Barry and I both don't really love the heat, don't do well in the heat, and it was hot. So we're happy that it's fall. It still feels a little bit like summer outside, but it's getting there. We're getting there. Now I have all sorts of fall content that I want to create for you guys, but first I really feel like I've got to get summer out of the way. And so this is going to be a bit of a chunky video. We're going to go through everything I read in June, July, and August. Buckle up. So we're going to go month by month, and I'm going to go from least likely to recommend to you guys to most likely to recommend to you guys. I had some like new favorite books of all time in the summer, so it's going to be good. I read a nonfiction book called One and Only. This author is herself an only child, and then she also decided to have an only child. So she's one and done, and her parents were one and done. She understands onlys very well. And as you guys know, Nora is an only, so I've been kind of hemming and hawing, like, is this gonna be okay? Is she gonna be fine? And this book was interesting. It really dove into society and how we've kind of been taught that having only children is not a good idea. We're like very much encouraged to have more than one child. And that some people are even told that they're selfish to only have one child. Excuse me. That's extremely rude. In any case, it was an interesting book. I didn't learn a ton more. And I think I was looking for a little more of the emotive side of it as well. Like, yes, I wanted some hardcore facts for sure, but I also wanted like the emotional side of having an only child. And I actually got more of that from Hollie Mcnish. I don't know if you know her. I believe she's Irish. She's either Irish or English. That's terrible that I don't know the difference, but I know the difference, but I don't remember if she is either Irish or English. But she has an only child. She's this beautiful poet. I love her so much. I follow her on Instagram and TikTok, and she's got a few poems that she's written about having an only child. And I get more out of that for sure than One and Only. But it was an okay book. I would probably recommend it if you have an only child or are thinking of only having one child. I think that might be interesting. Next up, I read Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. It's his latest book, and this follows a man who played the Thing Kid in this like cult classic horror movie. It was made by a bunch of young, I think like early 20-something college kids who just want to go and create a horror movie. So they direct it themselves, star in it themselves, film everything, and he plays in it. And you kind of flash forwards and backwards in time. Things didn't turn out well. There was a death, let's just say, in this horror movie, and he's recollecting all of it. I wasn't scared, and I was hoping to be more afraid. It really dives into the genre of horror, absolutely, but I wasn't blown away. There is one scene that I thought was really well done, though, where he's describing for us a scene within the movie where you know that there is a killer on the other side of the room or like behind a door or something like that. And there's a person who's about to be murdered. And there's like, I think 5 minutes where nothing happens. And people are upset because they're like, why isn't anything happening? And they're like screaming in the audience and stuff, like, make something happen. And then it just becomes extremely eerie. And then people get bored. And then of course the scene resumes. But I really did like that scene. I felt that nervousness of waiting for something to happen. So I did like that, but the movie itself, or the book itself, I should say, was just okay and not my favorite Paul Tremblay. One Perfect Couple. This is the latest Ruth Ware. This stars a girl who is in a relationship and her boyfriend is an actor and is trying to like make his break, and he gets on a reality show, but it's a couples reality show, so she has to go along with him. They go to a remote island where the show will be filmed, and isolated setting, of course, and then a storm comes in and they're cut off from the rest of society, and then all sorts of bad things start happening. I really was kind of surprised at how little I liked this book. I usually really like Ruth Ware, but this was like not for me at all. It was, and then there were none retelling, but probably my least favorite retelling that I read, which is kind of sad. I would read something else by her, like The It Girl. That was really good. Something else. Editing April here. I need to come on here and apologize as you get into the video because I am rubbing my nose throughout the whole thing. I think I had like a stray hair or something that was driving me nuts, but I didn't address it in the video. So here I am. My apologies. Enjoy. I read another nonfiction book called Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. Apologies if I'm saying his name wrong. He was a monk, and this book is about how you can find peace and make peace kind of part of your personality and how you show up in the world. This was a good read for me and something that my therapist recommended that I read. It really shows that you can be steadfast in your opinions of things, but also be kind at the same time and always speak to the humanity to another person. And it helps me to rewrite my letters. So I've been, as you know, maybe you don't know, I've been writing when Parliament is in session. I've been writing to many, many members of Parliament, including the Prime Minister, of course, about what's going on in Gaza and Palestine, and just asking them to be more vocal about stopping this insanity. It's been so long and so many thousands of people have been killed. And so I rewrote them all after reading this book to just kind of speak to the humanity. Everyone deserves to live and live in peace. It's not a big ask. That's not a big ask, including the Israeli people. Everyone deserves that. So yeah, so I rewrote those letters, and that was a very good thing for me to do, I think. And this book definitely did help me. I continued my obsession with Maisie Dobbs. I read The Consequences of Fear. This is book 16 in the series. This is such a great way to learn about World War I and World War II. We follow Maisie Dobbs. If you don't know this series, we follow her as she becomes kind of she's not a detective, but she's an investigator essentially. And she's lovely, and you care so much about her and her family and friends. And I just find it fascinating. Every single issue, every single book in this series, she looks into different aspects of what happened during World War I or World War II in these cases. And I find it fascinating. It's a great way to learn about history. I really liked Bad Men. This is a book about a woman named I think, Safi. And she's a serial killer, but she also is obsessed with this true crime podcast. And she finds out a way to meet this man, and she probably falls in love with him. And that's a difficult scenario to be in when you yourself are a serial killer. And this true crime podcaster guy finds himself immersed in the middle of a murder investigation, and she's kind of along for the ride. I found this to be really funny, and I will definitely be reading more by this author. Highly recommend. Next book, not so funny, more like heartbreaking. This is The Reformatory. This was my first book by Tananarive Due. It will not be my last. Oh my goodness, what a lovely, lovely writer she is. This is a horror book that will make you cry, and that's not usually what horror books do. This follows 12-year-old Robbie. We are living in like the Jim Crow South. I think it's like 1950s. And Robbie has been sent to a reformatory. Like, it's a school for boys to be changed after having done something terrible, which of course Robbie did nothing terrible and is just like the loveliest boy ever. While he's at the reformatory, he sees ghosts, and they are creepy, but they're also sad. This is a very sad story more than anything. If you want to be terrified reading this book, this is not the one for you. But you can learn about history while also enjoying a ghost story at the same time. I would highly recommend it. Also, finally read Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. This is set in the summer of 1960, and it follows a group of 5 boys fighting against evil in their little small town. I really liked this, and I really liked all of the characters. I was rooting for all of the characters. I was devastated by events relating to one of the characters. Totally devastated, but fascinated. So I'd highly recommend this if you read it and then got to that scene, if you know, you know, and it ruined the entire book for you, which is what happened to me while reading that book. Read this one instead. Read this one instead. There's also a sequel that follows one of the boys when he's grown up. I might read that at some point. My favorite book of June, by far, excuse me, was Instructions for Heatwave by Maggie O'Farrell. This is set in the summer of 1976. There's like a heat wave going on, and it's very hot in England, and we follow a family. We follow Greta. She's living in London with her husband. She's retired. Her husband's retired, and he has a very set schedule, routine that he does every day. He drinks his coffee, all is well, and then he goes out and gets a newspaper. Well, he goes out one day to get the newspaper, and he just never returns. And what I love about this book is the dialogue. It felt so real, and you're annoyed by the characters just based on the dialogue. This mom gets on the phone to try and talk to all of her kids. She has 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. They're grown-ups. And she's trying to tell them that he's disappeared, but she's not clear. She's so ridiculous. But I instantly cared about everyone in this book. These siblings were so interesting, and each and every one of them, you're reading from their perspective as well. And they all are bringing with them so many secrets of their own, and just a lot of drama within the family. And it's just about this family trying to find their dad, and also deal with their own stuff and the history of all of the dynamics between people. My God, this felt so real. This is why Maggie O'Farrell is like at the level that she is in the literary world. She is just magic on paper. My God, we're 18 minutes in, and I only got through June. July. Ooh, I have a couple of DNFs for July. Okay. I'm sorry to say, we're going again from least likely to recommend to you to most likely to recommend. I received I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, I think that's his name, from the publisher. I was so excited to read it. I'd never read him before, but I really did not get on with his writing. I found it confusing. This takes place in 1989 and it follows two teenagers who go on a killing spree in their small town. And it's just strange to say, I just didn't care. I was just flipping through, kind of like trying to get to the end, but I just DNF'd it. So I can't recommend that, sadly. And it makes me nervous to try something else by Stephen Graham Jones, but he's like so prolific and so beloved in the horror community that I feel like I've obviously got to give him another chance. But if you've read him before, where should I go next? I'd love to know, because I'm slightly confused. I also DNF'd The Woman in Cabin 10. Guys, Ruth Ware has disappointed me this summer. This follows a woman who gets on a cruise ship and talks to some girl, like young woman at some point, and then hears a scream and like a sploosh, and it sounds like that girl was either threw herself overboard or was thrown overboard. And then she goes to tell people on the ship what happened, and everyone's like, no one was in that cabin. That could not have happened. And she knows that she met this person. I was really bored and I did not care at all what happened to that lady. I am a bad person. I'm a bad person. Nana is next. I expected so much more out of this story. This follows a woman, Monica. She was raised by a woman who was very invested in the church. Her birth mother left her as a baby. And now her adopted mother has died quite suddenly. She was older, but she's died suddenly, and she's, Monica and her family are going to the funeral, and her birth mother shows up at the funeral, and Monica's really excited and kind of falls under her spell. And interestingly enough, it seems like the birth mother might have some witchy tendencies and might be asking too much of Monica and looking for too much of Monica and manipulating her, but in a magical, witchy way. A very straightforward story. Very straightforward story. I usually like a little bit more depth to my story, more things going on. The characters were pretty straightforward. It just felt like an okay story, but I just wanted more. Other thing is next. This is another one that I was kind of surprised I didn't love. I wanted to love it so much more. This follows a couple. His mom lived with them until she was sick, I think. And she lived with them until she killed herself. And Abby, this lady in this couple, thinks, oh, I'm kind of rid of her, thank goodness. But no, the mother-in-law has decided to haunt the family. I thought I was gonna like it more. It was funny in instances, but it was just okay. I just thought I was gonna get more out of it. Another book that is has become a booktube darling in the horror world is We Used to Live Here. I thought I was gonna like it more. In any case, this is about a gay couple who move. They kind of flip houses on the regular. They move to a house in the middle of nowhere and they're fixing it up. I think it's Eve who is at home and Charlie's away from home when there's a knock at the door and she opens the door and there's a family there and they're like, the dad's like, I used to live here when I was young and I would love to show my family. Can we come in? And she's very hesitant because you never know, right? But she's also a people pleaser. And so she does eventually, you know, let them in, but they just never leave. They will never leave. There are scenes in the basement in this book that are absolutely creepy. And there's definitely creepy elements actually throughout the whole thing. In the attic as well, there's creepy scenes. I liked that. There's an element that I can't talk about here because I will kind of give something away in the book. But there's like a magical kind of element in this book that just doesn't usually work with me. And again, it didn't really work with me here. So sadly, I didn't love it as much as other people did. Definitely creepy though. And I would recommend trying it out. I think this was just like a mismatch from me. I also read Kill for Me, Kill for You. This follows Amanda and Wendy. They meet in a grief group. Both of them had people in their families that were killed, and they are dealing with the grief of that. And they go out for drinks one night and they start talking and they decide together that they're going to kill who they believe is the killer from the horrors of their family lives. They're going to kill the other person's killer so that nothing can be like tied back to them, or it would be harder to tie it back to them, I guess. And they agree to do that. Plans are set. Plans start going into motion, and then just stuff hits the fan, okay? It hits the fan. I did enjoy this book. I will say there's elements of this book that, of course, remind me of Peter Swanson's The Kind Worth Killing. It's got a lot of a similar kind of vibe to it. And I just think The Kind Worth Killing did it better. So if you had to choose between the two, just read The Kind Worth Killing and then read the rest of the series. I have to read the third in that series. Anyway, it was good. I will read more by Steve Kavanaugh, but it wasn't like unbelievably blown away. New Happy is next. This is a nonfiction book that I really enjoyed. It speaks to how we have been taught within our society to become happy, which is very individualistic. And what I learned through this book, which I found most fascinating, was that service for others is actually one of the hugest, really, really big key to becoming happy. So I really liked that, and I highlighted my way through that book, and I intend to like go back and pick through those highlights and try to like implement some of that stuff into my life. Also with Nora, I'd like for her to have some of these values in her life. So I would recommend this. It was so lovely to read, and also there's really great illustrations in here that explain happiness concepts and theories and that kind of thing. So I would recommend. I really liked Everyone in This Room Will One Day Be Dead, or Someday Be Dead, sorry. This follows a woman named Gilda who is extremely depressed. She's very depressed, but she's also obsessed with death. When I tell you she's obsessed with death, I mean it's practically the only thing that she thinks about. She's so depressed that she reads in a flyer that there is free therapy going on at the Catholic Church near her. She goes to try to show up to that, and the priest comes out and is like, "Oh, wonderful, you're here for the job interview, come this way." And she just kind of goes along with it. And she gets the job. And they're all amazed by her because she knows how to use the internet and like just do basic things on the internet. And she finds out that she's replacing a person who was actually murdered. And this person was beloved in the community, and this person also had like an email correspondence with this other lady who I think lives somewhere nowhere near her. But so she keeps getting these emails from this lady to the person that she took over for. I think that lady's name was Grace or something like that. And she finally is like, maybe I'll just write back as Grace. Like, not a good idea. Don't do that. The lady was murdered. What are you doing? But she doesn't want this woman to feel bad. And she doesn't want this woman to know that her friend is dead. She wants to like protect her from that. And so she starts writing her back. It's just like one bad idea on top of another, but it ends up being really funny. So I really liked it and I would recommend it for sure. 2 more Maisie Dobbs books. I read books 17 and 18. So A Sunlit Weapon and then also The Comfort of Ghosts. And now like I'm just waiting for the next book that she publishes because The Comfort of Ghosts was her latest book. And now I've read them all. What am I going to do with myself? I'm so sad that it's kind of over. I could go back to the beginning and read them all again, but I think I'll just try to find another series that it's similar and then just obviously read all of the other Maisie Dobbs that come out. People have been saying that she's going to end the series soon and that The Comfort of Ghosts might be the last. That did not, I had no indication. There was no indication to me that The Comfort of Ghosts was the last. It just didn't give me that vibe. A very uplifting nonfiction book recommendation that I thought was fantastic. Nuclear War, a Scenario by, I think it's Annie Jacobson. Obviously not in any way uplifting, but this is the first Annie Jacobson book that I've read. I think she's a Pulitzer Prize winner and wow, she's great. And this book was terrifying. She literally took a scenario of what if nuclear war started, and she went through every single like second by second, minute by minute experience for, I think she was centering it around America and basically what if North Korea sent a nuclear bomb over to America, what would happen? Basically, the world would end is how this would happen. I was so shocked by some of the details of how little like protection there is from nuclear war. Like defense systems are really not there. The plan to keep the president alive is actually laughable. It's just devastating. The whole thing is devastating. This will make you want to join like a nuclear disarmament group of whatever sort. It will, if you are from America, you read this, you will start writing to your government asking them to sort this out because it is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Just terrible idea. Nuclear weapons, bad idea. My favorite book of July, easily The Watchers by A.M. Shine. This is set in Ireland and we mostly follow Mina. She is driving to drop off a parrot, odd beginning, but she's driving to drop off a parrot at this new parrot's owner in the middle of Ireland, like countryside, and her car breaks down. She's like, God, there's like no one around. She doesn't know what to do. And so she's like, well, I guess I'll take the parrot with me and like I'll walk and hopefully find someone to help me out. So she starts walking and walking and walking, and it's starting to get dark. And she suddenly sees like a kind of bunker, and a woman is outside screaming at her to run to her and get inside. And so she starts running and she does get inside. And there's a very small amount of people. I think there are 3 other people there in the bunker. It gets dark and suddenly the lights go on and she learns that there are watchers, there are creatures outside that watch these people and are like kind of obsessed with them. It's so disturbing. I loved every second of this. This has been made into a movie that I need to watch. I don't know how I feel about it being made into a movie and how well that will be done, but maybe it'll be wonderful. So I would definitely recommend this. If you're hearing, oh my God, Winnie Woo, it's having our snore on over there. I love it. Okay, moving on to August, again, going from least likely to recommend to you to most likely to recommend. We've got a DNF to begin with, and this is the Cheerleaders. We follow a girl named Monica. Her sister and her sister's friends were all cheerleaders, and they were one by one simultaneously all killed through random things like car accidents and that kind of thing. There's no more cheerleaders at all. Now, she lives with her mom and her stepdad. Her stepdad is, I think, the police chief of this small town. And she's still curious about what happened to her sister. And she starts kind of like rummaging around his stuff. And she stumbles upon her sister's cell phone. And she's like, why does he have this? And then she starts going through the cell phone to try and learn like what her sister's last moments in life were like. And she sees a number she doesn't recognize and starts corresponding with someone who's saying, don't trust your stepdad. I just felt like this was super juvenile. Like it felt very YA. There's nothing wrong with YA, but I usually, when I read YA, I kind of want to know that going in, and I didn't find anything on the tin, you know, that would suggest that it's YA. So I didn't love it. Ooh, I'm sorry to say. Another book that had the same problem. That's Not My Name. Follows a woman, no, a girl. She is a girl. She's a teenager. She wakes up after a car accident and has no memory at all. She's kind of in the middle of nowhere. She doesn't recognize her surroundings at all. She does. She is able to contact the police, and the police take her in, and she's at the station, and this man comes to the door, and he's like, oh my God, that's my daughter, Mary. And she's like, that's not my name. Why is that funny to me? Anyway, she's like, I don't really recognize this guy, but he seems like really sure that I'm Mary, so I'll go with him. And she goes and lives with him for a while. Simultaneously, you're following another set of teenagers who are trying to find their friend Lola, who has disappeared. And of course, the storylines converge. But again, this felt very YA when there was nothing on the tin that said YA. So I was just disappointed in that. The rest of the books I really liked. Operation Paperclip was the next book. This is nonfiction. It's called Operation Paperclip, the secret intelligence program that brought Nazi scientists to America. Again, by Annie Jacobsen, the same author who wrote Nuclear War Scenario. This book made me angry. This book made me so angry. It really dives into the government, the US government, and how just after World War II, when tensions became extremely high between Russia and America, as we all know, they decided that they wanted to know what these German scientists knew so badly that instead of allowing them to be accountable for their actions, they would just bring them to the US and make them very comfortable and have them work for them and like find out what they knew about science. And some of these people got off scot-free after doing horrible things. Like one of these doctors was doing an experiment. There were many German pilots that would crash into the sea, and it was cold in the sea. So they wanted to find out if they could bring back someone from the dead, basically, after being frozen to death, essentially, and dying of hypothermia. So this man did this experiment on a perfectly healthy Jewish men from various concentration camps. I can't remember which concentration camp it took place in. And he lied to the government for a while and said, like, no, I was doing it on animals, and like was showing the areas that he would do these tests on. And he was like, I was doing them on cows and that kind of thing. And he showed like where that could happen. And this man from the American government was like, that's literally impossible to fit a cow in that. He knew at that moment that it was actually humans that he was doing this on. Sorry, I'm going on rambling on this, but this man knew about that, told the government, and they were like, never mind. So here's the thing, like, what infuriates me about this. It's like, this is what infuriates, so many things infuriate me about this, but like the fact what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now, the fact that an Israel exists, a lot of people don't believe it should exist. I understand. I theoretically, mentally understand that. But this is why. This kind of thing is why. Because Jewish people have repeatedly been proven, have been proven to need a safe space, because people can learn the horrors of the Holocaust and still choose Germans, still choose Nazis, I should say, and keep them safe. Like, the priorities are just screwed up, and anti-Semitism is real. So, yeah, I read that, really liked it. It's gonna make you mad. Really, really mad. And they hid Operation Paperclip from everyone forever. Moving on. I also read Still Missing, which is a thriller, very dark thriller. Let me tell you, if you like Karen Slaughter, this is right up your alley. Still Missing follows Annie. She is a realtor, and she is kidnapped and taken to a very remote location. There's no one around, and she's kept by a man and subjected to horrific things. Her experience is horrific. You do meet her when she's going to therapy. So you know that she does get out, and she's telling her therapist everything that happened. It was really upsetting. I really did care about Annie a lot. And there were twists in here that I did not expect and was very disturbing. I would definitely recommend that book. The Echo Man is another book that I read. I think this is by Sam Holland, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the first in a series called the Major Crime series. So I'll definitely continue reading this. This follows two detectives, Kara and Noah, and they're trying to find a murderer. There's a series of murders going on in their city. They all are different from one another. They know it's a serial killer, but why isn't there a pattern? Usually serial killers have like their thing that they do, but this one doesn't, and they're just confused and racking their brains. Simultaneously, you follow a woman named Jessica. Her home goes up in flames one night. She's able to get her daughter out, but her husband sadly perishes in the flames. The police come. They're like, we think you might have had something to do with that. And so she's kind of on the run-ish. She's on the run at one point. And she meets up with a detective who has had a hard time. He's now suspended, but is very much interested in this serial killer and thinks that Jessica was actually victim of the serial killer. and you find out what happens in this book. It was just so much fun. I really, really liked this book and would like very much recommend. The Light Years is next. This is the Cazalet Chronicles. This is the first in the series. I'm really liking this series. The first book, I will say, is confusing. We have an enormous cast of characters. Like, this is Shakespeare play-esque amount of people. And there is a list of characters at the front of the book. So I didn't really remember who was who. Like, it took about half of the book for me to really figure out who was who. Now I'm actually moving on to the second book, and I know the characters for the most part, but I'm still figuring it out. So this follows a family right before World War II. We're in, I think, the year before the war has started, and they're living their lives in the English countryside. They get together as a family every year in the summer and spend their summers in the English countryside at their family estate. And they all have their own issues going on, their own secrets going on. There are really horrible things that happen in this book as well. And there are characters that you're like rooting for who are kind of outcasts. And then there are characters who you despise. And I think I will forever despise Edward, and I just want him to rot in hell. So, highly recommend. You guys are going to be shocked by the next one, okay? I'm reading fantasy. What? Who am I? Who am I? I don't even know. So, I have started reading the Farseer trilogy. This is all because of Peru's Project, Reagan, and her love for this series. I follow her. We read very different things. I just love her channel, and she's so cozy. In any case, so I read The Assassin's Apprentice. And in this book, this first book, you follow Fitz, and you meet him when he is discovering, and we're discovering, that he is a bastard child of the royal household. He had no idea. And he's being handed over to the royal household. I think he's like 7 or something. They're like, we can't take care of him anymore. Over to you. And he's the bastard son of chivalry. And what I like about this fantasy story, I think, is that magic is shown to you slowly. Like, there is a magic in here. Fitz is able to read the minds of animals. And as you go on in this book, they're trying to teach him how to read the mind of humans as well. And he's being taught how to be an apprentice and be useful. And it's really interesting. And you really care about Fitz. But again, the magic is not so confusing that I can't follow it. I'm reading a book now that I'm like, I don't know what's happening. But I'm interested in trying to like dip my toe into fantasy a little bit. Who would have thought? Never. Anyway, I'm really liking that. Last but not least, my favorite book of August was Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. You guys, if you like scary ghost stories, look no further. Josh Malerman. Now I want to read everything else by him. You guys know I loved Bird Box so much. Oh my gosh. It was my favorite horror book for a very long time. This book is just as good as Bird Box. It follows a young girl. She's 8 years old. Her name is Bella. And she lives with her mom and her daddo. And you are reading from her perspective. And I have to say, it really felt like he got into the head of an 8-year-old. Maybe she felt a little younger, but not that much younger. It was really good. And she is dealing with some real trauma. There's drama going on in her life between her mom and her daddo. There's stuff going on that she doesn't understand. We understand it as the adult readers. But she's also dealing with the woman that lives in her closet named Other Mommy. And Other Mommy, sometimes her head is like this, and sometimes it's lopsided like this. And sometimes Other Mommy comes out of the closet and sits by Bella and says, Bella, Will you let me into your heart? I have chills. It's terrifying. Go and read it right now. Okay. I have more chills thinking about that book. Oh my gosh, it was so creepy. Those are all the books that I read this summer. Oh my gosh, this video is like, it's gonna be like an hour long. So sorry. My apologies. But I needed to get this out of the way so that we could move on to fall stuff. I'm so happy to be back. I'm sorry that I vanished. I hope you had a lovely summer. Let me know in the comments below what you did, if you did anything fun this summer, and also let me know what you read and if there was any like standouts. I love you guys. I'll talk with you soon. Bye.